welcome to this webinar, this panelist talk about the future of work. My name is Didrik Strøhm and I'll be your moderator today. I am from Young Sustainable Impact. We've been working on online remote innovation programs for about 4 years now. And I guess that's why I get brought in as the moderator here. And to get started, we're going to talk about the future of work, the future of education, post-corona. We're going to talk about the major shifts that comes from crisis like this. And we're going to try to discuss a little bit about what potentially can happen and what we should, look forward to and what we might be a little more wary of. So to get started, let's introduce today's panelists. So we have 3 amazing speakers, not talkers. First off, we have Cathrine Berger, who is the Director of Social Policy from NITO, which is the largest union for engineers and technologists with more than 92,000 members. We also have Katinka Aaberge, the educational leader at NKI, which is online studies as well as physical. And lastly, we have Antoni Giannoumis, professor, social entrepreneur, and advocate. So first off, we can hear from Cathrine, if you want to tell us a little more about yourself.
Okay, thank you so much for this incredible introduction. And you remember as well that that NITO is the largest union. That's very good. Well, I represent engineers and technologists. I think they are perhaps at the forefront now of the crisis. So we're dealing a lot with unemployed and temporarily laid off members. Otherwise, we are dealing with inspirational policies to the government about the green economics, about how to put forward changes in society that we think the engineers know how to do. They're designing the products. So we are in the forefront right now trying to make something good out of the crisis at the moment.
And that's going to be interesting to hear from your perspective, definitely. Secondly, we have Katinka. Can you tell us a little bit more about what you do and who you are?
Yes, of course. Well, I work at NKI, which is one of the leading establishments within online and classroom-based teaching in Norway. We focus especially on lifelong learning, which I'm going to return to later. We have flexible education, both digital and innovative learning methods. And we give our students the knowledge and skills to help them achieve their goals. We have more than 200 different studies and courses, both online, and we have schools in Oslo, Bergen, and Trondheim. We offer courses at upper secondary level, as well as occupational courses and vocational schools, which is in Norwegian is called fagskole. 30 to 60 credits, occupational types of higher education. For instance, legal assistant, retail management, accounting, and so on. So today I will mostly talk about our vocational schools because these are the ones that we had to move from the traditional classroom and to the online platform because of the corona.
Yeah, that's also going to be something we want to tap into, what has happened at an actual school during this pandemic. And lastly, let's hear from Antoni and what you're doing. And you do a lot of stuff, so please explain to us.
Thank you, Didrik. I'll try to keep it short and sweet. So I work at Oslo Metropolitan University, which is one of the largest universities here in Norway. I work at the computer science department, and there I do quite a bit of teaching and research. But one of the main programs that I teach is the Masters of Applied Computing and Information Technology, which is a really brilliant new way of thinking about technology, less from a hardcore engineering problem-solving perspective and more on a social-based, how can we solve really challenging problems in society. My research all focuses on universal design, which is all about creating technology in a way that everyone can use it equally, no matter your background, no matter your age or disability or any other characteristic. And then I'm an entrepreneur. I sit on a board of directors for a couple of different startups here in Norway, in Ukraine, the United States, and in Mozambique and Uganda. Most of these startups are focused in the educational sector, but they also do a lot of work with innovation and entrepreneurship. So they kind of operate as incubators and startup garages and things like that. And then I do quite a bit of advocacy work at the UN and within different national governments. And my advocacy work focuses on human rights and specifically the rights of socially disadvantaged and marginalized communities.
Wow, so a lot of stuff. Definitely a perfect trio for this session. I think I'll just get started with the most near thing here, which is the shift from physical to remote work for all of you. There's been, I'm just gonna assume that like we're split in two types of people in this world during this Corona crisis. The ones that love that it's online and those that, could definitely do without it. But let's hear first from Anne-Cathrine. How has it been? Maybe there's some funny stories, but also how did it go, at least for your department in this shift?
Yeah, well, I think home working for employees in NITO works pretty fine. We're quite digital, so it was just to take your laptop with you at home. We have some challenges with employees having children, trying to be a teacher and an employee at the same time, but we have measures, so I think it went all right. We started with digital coffees each day. That was quite nice to have a digital coffee with everyone, just because not everyone lives together with someone. So to cope with both loneliness and being the first one you speak to, we introduced digital coffees. And then we have different kinds of NITO services to our members. We are about 140 employees in the Secretariat. And our main effort is to serve the members. So we serve the members digitally, like judicial, political guidance, help to understand new public rules on employment. We have crisis, the packages from the government. We have 5 packages from the government and coming in 2 days' notice, trying to interpret that as well. When it comes to funny situations, I have a son who's 6 years old, and I let him let him use his iPod or an iPad all the time, and he was a bit angry at me at one time because I said no. And then he made a note saying that mom is stupid, and then he just waited for me to have a digital meeting, and then he took a note going like this, like a demonstration. And I didn't notice, but everyone else noticed because they started laughing. So it's like, okay. So I'm very happy that he is at school right now. So that's that's one incident. Otherwise, we do see though that a recent research from AFI, the Working Research Institute, shows that this situation has made one digital difference a bit more than before, and it reports that high education and salary among employees, if you have a high education, if you have a high salary, you cope with this fine. The main difference is that you've got a lot more to do. But if you have a low education and low salary, you are temporarily laid off or you lose your job. So it's the main difference consisting of having a digital office if you have the knowledge to actually have the digital office. So we have started at NITO to have just one main tool right now, and that is to make sure that our members are really getting the knowledge they need when they are temporarily laid off or unemployed, because knowledge and digital tools are really, really the most important thing to cope with the crisis right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Katinka, when it comes to the educational sphere, how has it been for trying to continue to teach students and provide them with quality education in this pandemic?
We were actually quite lucky because most of our place-based studies already had an online alternative. So, and most of our teachers also had experience holding webinars and conducting online teaching. So, so we were lucky in that type, but we didn't have full-time studies online. We only had part-time. So our challenge was to find a way to adapt and adjust the classroom-based teaching and make it work within the online framework. So so that was the main challenge. Our place-based students chose this type of course because they wanted this close attention from the teacher and wanted this classical classroom-based type of study. So we had to ensure that they felt that they got the same level of attention and assistance from their teachers now that they weren't in the same room. But luckily our learning management systems have been working really well. We use Canvas, except for a couple of small hiccups in the beginning when the whole world had to go online. So except for that, it has been working really well. The process has been really educational, both for the administration, the teachers, and the students, I suppose. The teachers have been working really, really well and have been amazing, and have worked a lot to move the classroom teaching to the online platform. We have a close dialogue both with the teachers and with the students to ensure the best possible teaching. So the teachers, they have had to adapt the teaching, of course. When we have our place-based teaching, we have full day teaching, so from 9 to 2:30 in the afternoon, but holding webinars for this long online can be a bit too much, so we had to kind of organize it a bit differently. So they have adapted the teaching to fit their type of study. They have made day-to-day plans to help the students organize their day, holding webinars, of course. They've made e-lectures for the theoretical parts of the teaching. They've had a lot of one-to-one talks with the students, and they've been available almost 24/7 to make the transition as smooth as possible. And the teachers have always also had weekly discussion meetings to share experiences and to take part in training and help each other using the new functions in the learning management systems, the LMS and Zoom and the like. Yeah,
that could be another discussion, which video service that people use. I am definitely for Zoom. I can't believe that others are using other stuff, but I do understand that big organization might use Teams, for example, because it's more easy for a large organization. But yeah, let's move on to Anthony. Anthony, tell us a little bit about your experience, but also if you could add a little bit about universal design, because I'm feeling remote work for some people could be very, very difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think there's two key opportunities that this situation has kind of raised. One is an opportunity to include a bigger population than we've ever been able to include before, both in education and employment. And the other is kind of that trade-off that whenever you're including one group, then there's a opportunity to exclude another group. And so we always have to be conscious of everyone's needs and preferences in this area. But a couple of things that kind of jumped out to me in this discussion is the kind of gaps that exist around basic digital services like access to the internet. I'm teaching a course down in Maputo, Mozambique, and of course, not everyone has access to internet there, and so certainly not access to broadband or high-speed internet. And so this creates kind of a second-class citizen whenever you have someone who doesn't have that basic access to digital infrastructure. And then there's also a gap that's kind of come to life for me, which is a gap in household access and use of technology. So we know, based on a lot of evidence from many different parts of the world, that women and men have different access and use of ICT, of technology. Women typically have lower levels of access and use of technology than men. And this is kind of held constant no matter what country you're in if you look at specific demographic groups. And so when you take that into account with kind of the unequal distribution of household labor, of childcare, it really works to disadvantage women in a number of different ways. And this is extremely problematic. Like I said, we're including some people and excluding others. And I think women have been disadvantaged in a number of different ways due to this situation. And I've seen it even in my classes with my students. Yes, so I think it's high time we've started recognizing basic internet access, basic digital service access, and digital skills as a human right, and stop acting like it's some sort of option in society to not be part of the digital world. Yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, just to add on that, we're running an innovation program with Plan International at the moment, and we have people from a lot of different countries, and the ability to partake in some of our workshops and the program itself is actually quite limited for a lot of them because of internet access. So I'm hoping that there's so many internet projects coming up now that could change the whole dynamic there, especially in Africa. So I'm just hoping that actually comes to fruition as fast as possible. We're gonna move on to more of the overall changes that a crisis like this sort of creates. Because when a crisis hits economically, and with a pandemic like this, it forces literally the entire world to change the way that they do stuff, which should have some impact in terms of the future. So looking at when I'm talking about this, it's like all of us are predictors of the future, and we're all wrong. Like, we do not know, no matter how much of an expert we are, we can't really know, but we can look at some of the actual facts that is happening. For example, Mark Zuckerberg just went out and said that they are going remote within the next 5 to 7 years. They should be, anyone who would like to work remotely, and if their position allows it, they'll actually be able to work from home. So this is seen that a lot of companies actually are more effective online. We see that there are changes in needs. So if any one of you can think of, like, the next 5 to 7 years, is there any big happenings because of this crisis that you believe is important to look at and try to be a little bit of a predictor of the future? Yeah, anyone who would like to go first? Okay, Anne.
Well, I'm so old, so I can actually remember the last crisis we had. Just kidding, it was 8 years ago. So it's, but we still notice the petroleum crisis, because one of the effects from the petroleum crisis for our sake was that we had very many members in the petroleum sector. They lost their jobs. And the answer for the government was having courses learning how to paint a house. So I think I'm just putting it into trying to make a picture of it, but right now we see that the temporary laid off members and the unemployed members are not being offered courses on how to paint a house. Everyone now knows that to get back to work, you do need to have you do need to have further education. You need to have further education online. The government historically has opened up for having education at the university, as long as you take it before the 1st of September this year. So having this as a background, I think that the government has learned that giving education online, giving education towards different kinds of professions that are unemployed are really clear. So I think that's one good point. The other point is that I think everyone knows that you're not fully educated at all. Even though you're finished at university as an engineer or technologist, you're not fully educated. You need to get educated all the time. So in NITO, we offer our members education online in different kinds of topics, especially the green transition, because we try to prepare our members to actually be the solvers, the green solvers of the university and at the workplace. We do feel that there are an expectation because our members are everywhere. They're in private sector, in public sector, and we do feel that the authorities in both sectors, they are really looking at the engineers and technologists to, hey, we have this problem. We need to adjust the measures. We need to become greener. Could you just solve it? But at the university, they don't cope as part with that. You know, they're like, okay, you have to solve some problems theoretically, and when they are fully educated, they really meet the real world. So we try to interpret the real world for the student members and also for the members that are now working, to get them the right kind of knowledge online. I think that's the key word actually here, because we all know that engineers and technologists are needed, but we do also see that technologists and engineers in the petroleum sector are now they are unemployed, many unemployed, many much will be more employed perhaps. So we do see that how can we use this technology to transfer it to different types of challenges that we need to solve. So transfer the technology from one sector to another one is also something we think that the authorities have seen is very, very important compared to the last crisis.
So do you see that the people that are being laid off now are, I have a question about that, because are more of them going over to entrepreneurship, or like, do you see that they're taking initiative in other sort of organizations or starting up for themselves?
Well, we're trying to give them possibilities to do so. We do feel that there's a wish from the government that they should do so, but it's the difference between reality and having, you know, when you are temporarily laid off or you are unemployed, the first solution that comes into your mind is not, oh, let's make my own business, because it takes so much time before you get an income and you have a family. So our main focus there is to bring forward to the government the different kinds of projects that can actually use their knowledge, not only in their own area, but also in different kinds of other areas. I don't think we haven't discovered yet that the main solution is, and I know that you don't mean that, but the main solution is not now to become your own boss.
Definitely not. Any one of you, the others? Yeah.
Well, I agree with
okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, just go.
I agree with Anna-Cathrine when it comes to the lifelong learning, meaning that we aren't finished learning and getting educations when we have our high school degree or vocational bachelor's, master's, and so on. If we want to stay relevant and interesting, we have to be willing to learn and adapt our whole lives. So I think that is going to be more and more important, that we have to, especially us in NKI, we have to provide short occupational courses to help people stay on top and develop the skills that are important to stay relevant for the working life.
Yeah, do you see any particular areas where it's necessary to like take, like if you've been you were finished studying vocational studies for about 10 years, and now what is there technology, is there, you know, working remote, what is it that they need to, if they could have a course now?
Oh, that's difficult to answer just one specific, but what we see is that skill is very important. Knowledge is fine, but skills are important. So what we see that the working life wants are people who can go directly from the studies and the courses into a job and practice their work efficiently without having to learn a lot of new things. So the skill of how to perform the job is very important.
And how is schools able to provide those skill sets? Because it's like you want me to come to, like, I'm 22 years old, I'm done studying. It's like, we want you who have 5 years of experience with 0 years of work. Is that how's that?
So we have when we develop studies, we have people working very closely with the different types of occupations. So we get a lot of information on what the different types of jobs want our students to know before they enter the job. So we work closely with these different types of occupations in order to adapt our studies so that the students get the skills that they need.
Yeah. Anthony, before you burst off.
Sorry, it's just such an exciting conversation, and Anna-Cathrine and Katinka, you guys have such brilliant knowledge and wisdom in this area, and I just I'm excited to piggyback on some of this. So I think, you know, you're both recognizing how important role that the university plays, and I, you know, want to just say that from Oslo Met's perspective, from the university, all of our programs are applied, focused on real world activities and real world actions and professions. So we take a theoretical approach kind of as a secondary outcome of understanding really the practice and how that's going to look in industry and in civil society, and how that looks even in government. So I think there's more and more roles for all the universities in Norway to kind of transform from a much more traditional and, if I could say, archaic model, focusing almost exclusively on the theory and the kind of the ivory tower philosophy of academia, and looking more at and anchoring their research and education in reality and in the communities that they're supposed to serve. And I think that's an important transformation that'll be happening on the horizon. One of the ways Oslo Met has done that is we have a course now. It's a 10-credit course. Well, actually, it's offered in either 5-credit or 10-credit versions called Technology and Society. And that course is available for anyone at any faculty in Oslo Met, or actually anyone in Norway, really, to take, and it's focused on giving them the skills, the digitalization skills, that may apply in their industry. So it's not industry focused, it's not a technology course per se. It's a course focused on ensuring that a nurse, a teacher, a social worker, anyone working in industry is going to have some digital skills that they can apply in those environments. And that includes things like innovation, it includes things like entrepreneurship, but most fundamentally, it's about understanding the role of technology in our world and in our lives. We also offer a international summer school, which again is available for anyone here in Norway as well as anyone outside of Norway. We offer a variety of classes, everything from introduction to programming, very basic introductory level course on how to program, all the way up to more advanced data analytics and even artificial intelligence courses. So there's a great opportunity there to continue to develop your skills. And we get students coming back 5-10 years after they graduated to take more courses. We get students from bachelor's all the way up to PhD level taking these courses. So they're valuable for everyone. And last thing I'll say, to pick up on Anna Katrina's comment about being enabling kind of green problem solvers, I also want to mention that there's a real opportunity here in Norway for blue problem solvers. Let's not forget, Norway is mostly coastline. And even though the green agenda is incredibly important for Norway, it's also incredibly important to recognize the asset that Norway has in its oceans and in its waterways, and how we can utilize those responsibly and make sure that they're there for generations to come.
Perfect. I actually want to circle back on the, so when it comes to being able to provide the theoretical as well as the skill set in sort of the same run, I find it incredibly difficult, because I feel the biggest companies are talking to the universities and telling them what they need, not what the future is or what you should focus on as a person, but they tell them, so we need this very specific things, which I can't really see that in 10 years that would actually be, in many cases, because of a crisis like this, right? It won't actually be super valuable. So in the sense that people get more creativity when they get to do tasks, that they get more autonomy when they get to, for example, in entrepreneurship, if you only learn about innovation theoretically, it's like getting a car license without having driven a car. So just from the educational to the real world, work life, how can schools in the future become better at, like, don't think about the things that you have right now in schools. Think if you had like the opportunity now, you were the king of all schools, and you wanted to create the perfect blend between future current needs and theoretical education. How would you how would you go about that?
Can I say?
Yeah.
If my background is from politics, sorry about that, because I'm referring to that a lot of times. But my favorite question when I meet politicians and other organizations is, if you were the prime minister, what is the main task or effort that you would put forward? And if I were the minister of education, I would definitely make sure that universities have a chance to make the students having practice their education, because I'm a political scientist and I didn't visit the parliament, or I didn't talk to politicians before I was finished, or I did, but I was different from the other students because I wasn't inside reading, I was outside talking to people. So to make sure that that's been one of our main tasks with the NITO students or engineering students, is that they need to get in contact with the subject, they need to get experience. I think that's the one effort I would put forward if I were the Minister of Education. The other one is that I would cooperate with all the huge companies. We do see a tendency right now that is really positive, and that is that the big companies like Telenor is actually bringing forward free courses online. And they're doing it because, like Anthony was talking about, we have this situation that everyone is cooperating. There's a sense of cooperating. And I think that's really nice. So if we could just advance on that, many more in universities have to give free courses, but if I were a student in political science or engineering, I would really go to those businesses that offers free courses, because that's one way of getting in touch with a future employer, I think. And we do also see another tendency that I've never discovered before, and that is that the government for 2 weeks ago gave 20 million kroner to 6 universities, giving online courses, short online courses to unemployed and temporarily laid off workers. And I think that's also something we will have never seen before. So to sum up, give the students situations and experiences to practice their subject, give them real tasks to solve, and then again go to the big companies that right now some of them are offering free courses. And I also think Oslo Met is also offering, I think, Anthony, some free courses, and that's really, really historical because that's never happened before. So yeah.
Yeah, and just to take that example of political science, though, like if you're a political science student, you learn so much theory about how the world works. Who can ever read about how the world works? You can only, with your experience in very niche areas, understand how something works. So, for example, a good way for you to learn how the world works, in quote unquote, is that when you're a political science student, you could take a very important topic to you, let's say in your local area, and try to make a political change, or try to do something, because you will be hit back by forces that you didn't know that existed, right? So that you could actually feel under your skin how it is to try to change something, which definitely would put some respect back to probably a couple of politicians and so on.
Yeah, if I could just be personal again, and I wrote about international relations, but it wasn't before I was an intern at the UN, and I was the lowest on the lowest level. Then I understood the meaning of international relations, and it might seem ridiculous, but that was a revelation for me. This is how international relations actually works. And then I've been studying for 5 years, so that's why I always bring my favorite cup, the UN cup, when I need hope and inspiration. And I think that's one of the main issues. I think it's obvious that you need a practice, but it doesn't seem it's being obvious before now. So I think that's something we need to make the politicians understand. And when I worked at the Parliament, I wrote down many topics that I thought the international relations and students should write about, the relations between the government and the Parliament. But the response from the institute that I was a student at, they were like, "No, this is boring. This has something. We need to do research." But I was telling them that, but this is real. This is research with a meaning, because then we add something to the politics with a meaning. But I think times have changed. Maybe they are more positive right now.
Anthony?
Sure. So I just love this conversation so much. It's been the universities have been going through a massive transformation in the last really generation to try to figure out, number one, how can they actually offer an education to the largest group of people, largest and most diverse group of people than ever before. And then that secondary issue is, how can we stay relevant? Because there's so many issues with how the institution evolved, the institution of higher education has evolved, that there's a lot of clinging to the past. And it's difficult to kind of have that front-facing progressive agenda when we're so tethered to that history. So it really is going to require some systemic changes restructuring the whole institution and not just trying to kind of put a Band-Aid on it or kind of put, I grew up in Texas in the southern part of the US. We have the saying, put lipstick on a pig. It's not about putting lipstick on a pig. We really need to find a way of transforming what it is. And that may mean that a lot of what we do is irrelevant and that we have to find a different way of doing it. The danger here is that industry is moving on without us. They're at a point now where they're debating whether a degree is even a relevant criteria for hiring someone, because they can give them the skills on the job. It was just like Anna-Katrina said, you know, they're offering courses now. They don't need the university to kind of upskill these people in a way that they're going to make a productive value contribution to their work. So that should strike fear in the heart of every rector and university president around the world, because that's obsolescence is the future there. So I think we may need to shift our thinking and look at the university not so much as a degree granting institution, but more about as a kind of incubator. What are we trying to incubate? Is it about the skills? Is it about the knowledge? Is it about the ability? And then how can we translate that into real practice?
Yeah, because I've been working at startups for about 7-8 years now. What I figured out is that if there's a need to get something done, you'll get it done, and you just have to do it because there's no one else there to ask for help. There's no mom and dad. There's no boss, because there's no boss. Like, even you're not the boss. No one is the boss because there's only like 3-4 people trying to create something. And it's like we were in this position 5-6 years ago where nobody did social media marketing. Nobody did marketing. And it's like, okay, I have the time, so I'll just learn marketing. And I actually became quite good at marketing, so I've been doing that for quite some time now. But I have no clue. I did not have any formal education. I just had to start posting Facebook posts and reading the data, and then reading a lot of information. And that's how I learned. Within a year, I became pretty decent at social media marketing, right? So you could, if you want to be good at something, you do not need to study. Like, not today, not this year. I always had this discussion with my mom as well, where my mom always comes to me, is like, Didrik, you need to, you know, get that master degree or something like that. And I'm like, Mom, it's okay. I'm doing startup stuff. So even if I were to fail my startup, I have that experience, and then I can just boast with that, right? Yeah.
Sorry, I just want to add on to that because it's such a great point. You know, one of the main mechanisms now for upward mobility for populations in the global south is simply having access to the knowledge base that's available on the internet. They can take and transform in one generation their families' lives just by learning some basic skills that they can get online. And it's not a matter of, I need to go to university in order to do better than my parents or my grandparents. It's now just a matter of, how well can I go about self-directed learning? How can I learn how to learn and then apply those skills in practice?
Absolutely. And you, for example, you have maybe the most annoying money makers on the world, which is gamers, like kids that are 17 years old winning $1 million at playing Fortnite. Like, that's got to be blowing the mind of parents over 50, where they're looking at their kids making more money than they've ever made just by gaming a game they said was dangerous because they get squared eyes. Like, there's so many opportunities out there, and we're teaching our children that you have to work to become needed by the big companies, which might well fail in, like, when you're done studying. Like, there's no master system here. Like, we have to adapt. And so just to come up with one very good advice for all students out there: if you are working, studying anything like law, political science, whatever, there's so many startups out there who has no knowledge of that but need you. And here's the thing about being needed, is that you get to take all the decisions, make all the mistakes, and learn all of the learnings. Because if you come to a job and you get an internship and then you get a low-level job, you'll be told what to do, and then you can be this creative. But if you get in a startup, just work for free, whatever. I worked for free for so many startups and initiatives, and nobody told me what to do because they didn't know themselves. So I was the main expert. So that's a tip for you. Katinka, do you have anything to add?
No, I agree with what you say, but I think that gamification, the way to use games and gamification in education is really interesting for the future, how to make education fun and practical by combining methods of gaming and teaching together. So I think that that is going to be the future within some parts of skill-based education, at least.
Yeah, I think definitely that education has a lot to learn from gaming in general. Like you'll see that on gaming, you'll always have these levels and the stuff that provides you with a sense of how well you're playing and so on, which definitely could be brought down to, especially online education, where you have online, you have online courses, you have online videos and text that people read through, and there is different tasks that you do with it. So gamification should definitely in some way, but there are some dangers to it though. Like we've been doing this in our online innovation program for YSI, where we have this point system and they use something called Norway.com, and people sort of look at getting the points rather than actually consuming the knowledge. And so it's difficult how to master it, but there's definitely a lot of research going on there.
May I add something on that, Didrik? Because I can see that some of the comments on the chat is about how could I, as a student, cope with the crisis. And I just want to add on that, we're in Norway. The Nordic model is very important. That's one of the reasons that we actually are coping with the crisis as good as we are, because we do have the oil fund, but we do also have the cooperation between employees and employers. And each union has a student organization. So if you're smart as a student, you should become a member of a student union, because if you do become a member of a student union, you get some rights. You also get some cheap insurances, but even though you get some rights, and I can see that the first time in history, we see that almost like a union, we did as well. One of our main questions for the government and demands for the government was actually that the students should be treated as employees, have the same rights as employees, because they are not temporarily laid off; they're just laid off. So they should have the same economical rights. So just to add on to answer one of the comments in the chat, become a member of the union and be aware of the society that we have something called the Nordic Model. Do experience that we have a Nordic Model, and maybe you can get some new chances, new working chances through become a member of a union, because then you can also get advices from mentors and blah, blah, blah. So it's a chance I see that many students haven't discovered yet. So, yeah.
Perfect. We just to know, we have 15 minutes left. I thought of going over to some questions. Anyone who has any questions, be it on Facebook Live, be it on Zoom itself, write in the chat or write in the comments, and we'll try to get to it. We already have a couple of questions. Let's just one here. If you were 18 years old today and could choose any field of work or study, what would you like to focus on, and what education would you choose? Anthony was very quick there, so go.
Sure, I was already taking notes about this question because I absolutely love this question. I've been there so many times in my life, having studied multiple degrees. So I have a degree in business, music, political science, and public health. So I guess if you could draw a narrative out of that, is just to follow your nose. See what it is that you care about, what matters to you, what's kind of driving you, where your motivation flows from, and pursue that. That will never, that approach will never betray you, because this is about the process. This is not about the end. It's not about getting a degree, and it's not about going into a job that matches your degree directly or anything like that. This is about understanding your place in the world and how to kind of create value out of that. So I tell my students there's a couple of criteria you need to look for. One, are you doing something that you can make money at? Is it something you care about? Does the world actually need it? And are you good at it? So I think if you can match up those four things and you're in the progress of your career, you're going to do great. And that may mean you have to pivot, and you should never feel shame for that. I think there's a lot of pressure for students coming into a university to pick one thing, do that the whole time, graduate, get a job doing exactly that, and not even like within that field, but exactly what the stereotype of that field is. And that's really, really problematic. You need to stay open for opportunities. You need to stay open to your own internal motivations and changes for your own aims, and pursue your love.
That's perfect. Anne?
this is, and I think Anthony put it beautifully, but just add on one thing and be curious on the society. Become a member of an organization or a political party or whatever, because then you get new friends and you get new knowledge, and you go out of your safety circle and learn a lot more, and you get challenged. I mean, my rule is say yes to things that your stomach says no to. So just you know, like this one, entering a webinar like this in Norwegian, yes, perfectly, but in English, oh, help. So just challenge yourself. And you know, when I was younger, I wanted to be a car mechanic because there was no women being car mechanics. But the problem was I didn't have a passion for cars. So that was a problem. But, and I think Anthony put it really nicely, look at what your passions are and follow them. And one more, if I can add on that, become an intern at the UN, please. It's a wonderful experience, and you meet students from all over the world, and you really get to know the conflicts of the world and how to solve it. And then again, you get new friends. And a tiny more thing, study at international university as well, because Norway is quite safe, but abroad it's perfect, beautiful.
Nice. Katinka?
Yes, I totally agree with everything that Anthony and Anne-Katrine says, and especially the part where he said that, Anthony said that it's okay to change your mind. If you've started a 3-year, 4-year, 5-year education and you feel that this isn't actually right for me, or I really feel that my motivation and my passion is elsewhere, then it's okay to change your mind. I think that's just so important to stress that. That's to choose something else and to go another way is totally fine.
Yeah, and just to add on everything, like you're 18 years old, the majority do not know what they want to do. If you're able to push away parents, push away your friends, push away society in terms of what you want to do, and you do not know what you want to do at this point, personally, I would just take my time. I would try out working, you know, for free or join organizations like Anna mentioned. What I did personally is that I was quite clear that I was going to be an entrepreneur at 17, but it went like from caring about like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, chill and have enough money to do whatever I want, because I was like I hated school and stuff like that. But it eventually, after a lot of attempts and failures, I sort of learned at every point what I cared a little bit more about. And I ended up sort of, okay, I definitely care about other people, you know, I care about the planet and stuff like that. So all of my efforts sort of tuned into that after having tried actually a nightlife app. And I understood that, why do I even care about the nightlife? I do not at all. So I'm not doing that. I did a music app. It was pretty cool, but it wasn't at the level. And then, so every time you do a project, every time you join an organization, you learn a little bit more about what you really care about. And then the last thing is just to think a bit long-term. A lot of people think, okay, what's going to happen in the next 5 years? Like, if you want to become really good at something and you do not haven't started on it, don't feel stressed if you're 18 or 27 or 40 for that matter. Just, you know, you always have the time to sort of change the route. Okay, I'm going to try to find another question. So, okay, we have from Chris here. So what are some of the most important skill sets for leaders that may differ from the current leader skills? Not sure what we have not defined what the current leader skills are, but from your perspective of this question.
Go ahead, Anne-Katrine.
No, you start, Anthony. Sorry,
okay.
sorry.
I would say probably one of the most critical is a sense of empathy. I think this is one of the things that has led the planet into a lot of different crises, including war, but certainly into our crisis around sustainability and the environment. Being able to empathize not only with the people around you, but with you know, future generations and the work that's going to need to be done. It's a very, very powerful tool to kind of course correct and to find mechanisms that are both economically sustainable as well as kind of socially impactful and socially sustainable.
May I add on that, Didrik? Yeah. I think that's also wonderfully put it. I think if you see the discussion right now is quite interesting. If I could talk a little bit about politics again, you can see that this discussion about female leaders in female prime ministers, that they are actually dealing with the crisis more successfully than the male leaders of countries. So why is that? That's the discussion going on. And I think one of the main common or the red line with all the female leaders is actually that they show empathy and they are interested and they are open and they are using different kinds of methods to get to know the public. And if you see that the Prime Minister of Norway, she has made a tradition about talking to the children. So they have press conferences for the children. I think that's wonderful, you know, because the children's questions are the worst ones, but also the best ones. So if you are so open-minded that you deliberately put yourself in front of children and you don't know what they're going to ask, and all the reporters are at the place, I think that's a good picture describing what are the quality of the leaders. And if I can add on one other quality is being interested. You know, being interested in others, not just your circle, but just ask questions. Because sometimes I feel like when I'm talking to new acquaintances, I'm interviewing people. I'm thinking, okay, I'm interviewing, but I don't get any questions back. So that's my measuring of people around me. Do they ask questions back? Are they interested? And I think that's also another quality that is important for leaders.
Awesome. Do you have anything to add there, Katinka?
No, I think they both just put it beautifully. I totally agree with everything they said.
Oh, you have something? Yeah.
I'll pick up on what Anna-Katrina said, because I think that's a sense of diversity is incredibly important for any leader, to be able to surround themselves with people that have different backgrounds and experiences than they have, so that it's informing their decisions. One of the definitions of leadership is being able to make decisions that don't affect you, but affect other people. And if you're not bringing those people into that decision-making process, then chances are, 9 times out of 10, whatever decision you make is going to be have some very challenging and negative effects. So I think that sense of diversity is important. And I want to be clear, empathy is not a soft skill. I don't know what soft skills are, and I hate that term. Empathy is a power skill. This is about leadership. This is about taking control of the world around you and understanding how you can better serve the people that are most important in your life.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about empathy and so on, and I 100% agree with that. I also think one important thing to mention is that leaders need to be able to actually take decisions in diverse challenges. Like, for example, in this crisis, there is no time to be empathetic to everything. You actually need to take pretty hard decisions. You need to be able to change very rapidly. But if you have empathy while doing that, you'll obviously be so much better off. But you know, the toughness of different situations, but that you have an empathy approach to. We're going to try to do at least 1, maybe 2 more questions. One is from Jarre Lasse Helander here. And I think this goes to specifically Katinka and maybe Anthony as well. What are your thoughts about the psychological effects or aspects of the pandemic when it comes to students that they know have gone from like the social student life to a more isolated day-to-day life?
Well, yes, that's actually been one of the challenges that we've been working a lot with, creating this safe digital classroom and a safe environment where students feel that they're able to participate, because often in a webinar where there are a lot of participants, you often just sit and listen. So how do you create and activate, how do you activate the students and create the safe environment? So we have been working a lot with that, and how to make the students take part more actively in the webinars. So we have made PowerPoint presentation templates using pictograms, and this is in relation to Zoom. When we use open mic, for instance, then the student knows that they should come with some sort of feedback. If we want to have discussions, we use the breakout rooms, raise hand if you want to share something or agree with something, and so on. Because we see that if the students just passively sit there and don't speak, don't use the camera, just listen, then the classroom, the environment, and the social part of the teaching kind of disappears a bit. So I think predictability in the teaching is important, because then the student, then they know what's expected of them. So when the webinar starts, they know that, okay, if I'm supposed to speak, then I know when I'm going to speak. I will get clear instructions, and I will get the possibility to see some faces and talk to people.
That is such a good point. Like, it's so annoying when there's only black screens and you do not see if anyone reacts to what you're saying. Just like we're doing now, but we get comments luckily though. Anthony?
I think Katinka covered it fabulously. The social aspects of learning are critical.
And then we have the last final questions of today, people. We have about 5 minutes left, so let's keep it short. What has the biggest fails in your work life taught you? And has any of these the learnings come out handy during this crisis?
Maybe I should start. Or...
Yeah.
I don't like the expression failures, but I've done a lot of them, very many so-called failures, and I think one of them was applying for a job, and then at the end, at the last minute, we were 2 candidates. I felt like I became another person, and this was in between. I had a lot to do at my work at that time. So one failure was because I didn't have the time to prepare. So preparedness is, of course, everyone knows it's important, but preparedness is something you just have to practice. Not read about, but just practice, like a role play. So if you're applying for a job, just try to get some of your friends and just try to have the role play to actually make sure that this happens. Another huge mistake I've done is at work. When I worked at the parliament, I worked for a politician, and we were in competition with another politician. It was election time, and it was the last day of the election. And then I was so angry because one of the opposite politicians made a statement that we had used a lot of time preparing. And I was sending in an SMS text message to my boss politician saying that this is worse. She took our case, and I sent it to the wrong person. I sent it to the person who actually the opposite, the politicians that we were combating. So, and she was like, okay. And I was really, how to lay low and how to make apologies. So that's just 2 small, that's not failures, but 2 small wrongs that we've been doing. And I don't think that's, I've learned a lot from it. So don't get, don't get hurried, just be calm.
And Anthony?
Sure. So as an academic, people often think that I've never failed a class and I've just gotten straight A's my whole life. And, I've failed classes. I've completely failed and changed degree programs. And it took me 7 years to get my doctorate, where mostly it takes 3 to 4 years for a typical PhD. Just to respect the process and embrace those failures. I would rather see someone, if this was appropriate, to give me a CV that lists all their failures and their successes, so I can see that they've actually tried to do something and not been successful, than to just see this polished kind of sheen of, oh, everything has gone perfect in my life. That is a recipe for disaster as far as I'm concerned. If you haven't failed and figured out how to cope with it and divorce your identity from that issue, then there are better people to work with.
And Katinka?
Yes, I totally agree. I actually have been studying a lot, so I haven't actually that many years of work experience in total, but I think that what Anthony said is don't be afraid to fail. You have to try new things and be willing to change, and sometimes you will fail, and what's important is to learn from it, I think.
And just to finish it up, I'm gonna also, so one of my biggest mistakes is definitely that early in my startup career, in a sense, I was very much impatient. So I very much just went straight ahead, often alone. I didn't wait for others or try to get others with me. So over the years, I think what I've been learning and still working on, obviously, is to make sure everyone is walking together. Like, even if it's a bit slower, it goes much faster in the long term. So making sure everyone is feeling good in the role, that we're living by our core values and so on, has definitely helped a lot. But so that's today's session. Thank you so much for everyone who came on board, and from Development Goals Forum, thank you to Katinka, Anthony, and Anne-Cathrine. It's been a very big pleasure to have you all here and to have this amazing conversation. Thank you so much.